This is a moment in Jewish history. Last week, I discussed Chaim Weizmann, Israel's first president. And this week, I want to discuss a friend of his, Dr. Albert Einstein, who was offered the role of Israeli president. More on that later. Once I was walking through Hebrew University campus with a friend and noted a statue of Albert Einstein, to which my friend, who is a very knowledgeable person, stated, "Wait, you mean the Einstein? Like our Einstein? What did he have to do with Hebrew University?" And that's part of why I do this podcast, because even a knowledgeable and educated person can't know every aspect of history. So yes, the Dr. Albert Einstein, the famous Nobel Prize winning physicist, was a co-founder of Hebrew University with his friend Dr. Chaim Weizmann. Albert Einstein was born in Germany to secular Jewish parents. He attended school in Switzerland and eventually became a noted physicist. In 1905, he published 4 papers, including his special Theory of Relativity and his mass energy equivalence. Einstein became well known in the scientific community, and in 1919, during a total eclipse of the sun, his theories were put to the test and proven correct. It made headlines around the world, and Einstein became a celebrity. Meanwhile, World War I had ended. The British were now in charge of the land of Israel and much of the surrounding areas, and things were heating up in Germany and throughout Europe with a new group called the Nazi Party. The Zionists had always sought to create an actual university in the land of Israel, even going back to the 1880s and the First Zionist Congress. After the British took over, the Zionists, led by Chaim Weizmann, finally received permission to lay a cornerstone in 1918 for the creation of a university in Jerusalem. By 1921, Einstein's fame had grown, and Weizmann was looking for fundraising. And that's when the two met. As I mentioned in last week's episode, Weizmann had several patents of his own on scientific discoveries, including his acetone butanol ethanol fermentation, which became known as the Weizmann process and could be used to create smokeless gunpowder, something that came in handy for the British during World War I. Weizmann the chemist and Einstein the physicist met in 1921, and Weizmann recruited him on a fundraising trip of the United States. In a letter, he wrote, "I am not at all eager to go to America, but I am doing so only in the interest of the Zionists. I do what I can to help those in my tribe who are treated so badly everywhere." In another letter, he wrote, "I'm off to America, not to speak at universities, but rather to help in the founding of the Jewish University in Jerusalem. I feel an intense need to do something for this cause." The Jewish Sentinel in Chicago reported on it as follows. Thousands of prominent citizens of the United States came to meet the ship carrying Professor Albert Einstein and Professor Chaim Weizmann, president of the Zionist World Organization, waving Jewish flags of white and 2 blue bars, wearing buttons with Zionist inscriptions, and cheering themselves hoarse as the boat drew near. Professor Einstein was reluctant to talk about relativity, but when he did, he said most of the opposition to his theories was the result of strong anti-Semitic feeling. Professor Weizmann stated, "I never met Professor Einstein before this voyage. He has a singularly sweet and lovable nature, and is exceedingly simple in his habits of life. Professor Einstein attaches the utmost importance to the early inauguration of the Jerusalem University and is prepared when the time arrives personally to associate himself with its activities, a course in which there is reason to hope he will be followed by other Jewish scholars and scientists of worldwide reputation," Weizmann stated. And indeed, Einstein's worldwide reputation would only grow. He was awarded the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics for his services to theoretical physics and his discovery of the law of photoelectric effect. In 1923, Albert Einstein visited the land of Israel. The Jewish Telegraphic Agency reported on it as follows. A very representative gathering of notables, with the exception of the Arabs, gathered to hear Professor Albert Einstein lecture on his theory of relativity at the Hebrew University House on Mount Scopus Wednesday night. Prominent Arab residents declined the invitation, presumably because they did not wish to honor the Jewish scientist. Professor Einstein began his speech in Hebrew. Einstein stated, "I too am overjoyed to be giving my lecture in the country that has spread Torah and light to the entire enlightened world, and in a house that is being prepared to be a center of wisdom and science for all peoples of the East. I regret to say that I am incapable of reading my lecture in the tongue of my people, and am therefore compelled to switch to a language understood by all of you." He continued his lecture in French, which, although was understood by many in the audience, the subject of his Theory of Relativity was difficult to understand. Nevertheless, it was the first public lecture at Hebrew University. In Arab neighborhoods and cities, shops were closed and black flags were hoisted on houses in protest of Einstein's speech. Einstein also visited Tel Aviv, Migdal, and Haifa, where he spoke at the Technion Israel Institute of Technology. There he planted a tree, which still stands to this day. He spoke about how impressed he was that the new academic institution was teaching young Jews hands-on skills. He also met Jewish pioneers, whom he called grimy but earnest will, and with a tenacity and love in pursuit of their ideal, carrying on the fight against malaria, hunger, and debt. 2 years later, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem had its official opening ceremony, which was attended by Chaim Weizmann, Rabbi Avraham Yitzhak Kook, Lord Balfour, and other dignitaries. And what did Einstein have to say about it? I'll let you listen in his own words from this audio recording from several decades later.
The university was founded long before the establishment of the independent state of Israel. This institution of research and scholarship represents a spiritual bond encompassing the Jews in all countries. I am grateful to all who followed our invitation.
Einstein supported both the Zionist movement and was a pacifist. Throughout his life, he wrote against violence and called for world peace. During the rise of Hitler, he took part in a rally in England's Albert Hall in 1933 against the Nazi policy.
I am glad that you have me given the opportunity of expressing to you here my deep sense of gratitude as a man, as a good European, and as a Jew. It cannot be my task today to act as judge of the conduct of a nation, which for many years has considered me as her own. We are concerned not merely with the technical problem of securing and maintaining peace, but also with the important task of education and enlightenment. Without such freedom, there would have been no Shakespeare, no Goethe, no Newton, no Faraday, no Pasteur, and no Lister.
Einstein soon afterward fled Europe for the United States. He wrote to Prime Minister Nehru of India the following in 1947. Long before the emergence of Hitler, I made the cause of Zionism mine, because through it I saw the means of correcting a flagrant wrong. The Jewish people alone had for centuries been in the anomalous position of being victimized and hounded as a people, though bereft of all the rights and protections which even the smallest people normally has. Zionism offered the means of ending this discrimination. Through the return of the lands to which they were bound by close historic ties, Jews sought to abolish their pariah status among peoples. After Israel finally became an independent country in 1948, Chaim Weizmann became its first president. Einstein wrote to his old friend the following: I have read with great satisfaction that the Palestinian Jewry has made you head of the new state. I am confident that our people will overcome this last scare, and that you will live to experience the satisfaction of having created a happy Jewish community. With heartfelt greetings and best wishes, yours, A. Einstein. Now, when I was in the process of preparing this podcast, I came across quite a number of websites and YouTube videos claiming that Einstein was against Israel, against Zionism, and called Zionists criminals and so forth, both before and after the founding of the state. These websites are mostly anti-Israel, pro-Arab, Marxist, communist, or neo-Nazi in nature. Einstein was a scientist and not a politician. He was a pacifist and spoke against violence. He often called for peace between Jews and Arabs and even at times broached the idea of binationalism, something that some Zionists of the day supported. He wrote a letter condemning the 1929 massacres that occurred in Hebron, Sfat, and other cities and took the lives of over 100 Jewish people. I have a copy of that letter, printed in a small, rare book called Einstein About Zionism, printed in 1930, which I picked up at a used bookstore here in Jerusalem. In it, he wrote, "I am convinced that the devotion of the Jewish people to Palestine will benefit all inhabitants of the country, not only materially, but also culturally and nationally. I deplore the tragic events of last August not only because they revealed human nature in its lowest aspects, but also because they have estranged two peoples and have made it temporarily more difficult for them to approach one another. But come together they must, in spite of all." Because of Einstein's fame, many tried to sway him to their side or use his past statements for their own cause. Einstein was listed among the over 20 signatures to a letter to the New York Times in 1948, stating they were disturbed that Menachem Begin was visiting the United States and spoke against his newly formed Herut Party and his past activities with the Irgun Tzvai Leumi. In 2007, a private letter was auctioned off that Einstein wrote back in 1948 in response to a request from the American Friends of the Fighters for the Freedom of Israel, rejecting their request of support. Today, when you peruse the internet, these letters are used to show that Einstein was anti-Israel. However, I think a more nuanced response from a group called Partners for a Progressive Israel makes more sense. The author of the article, himself a progressive Zionist, talks about a book release by a communist group claiming that Einstein was anti-Zionist. He writes that in the communist worldview, they cannot accept Einstein as really being a Zionist because that would make him a supporter of something bad. They deny the existence of left or progressive Zionism. This concept simply doesn't compute for them. They don't understand that a Zionist can oppose Israeli policies and still be a Zionist. Israel's Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion visited him in America. Here's a newsreel from 1951.
Prime Minister Ben-Gurion of Israel arrives at Princeton, New Jersey to call on Dr. Albert Einstein, one of the world's greatest scientists, the father of relativity and the man whose physics formula led the way to the atomic explosion, plays host to the leader who played a great part in the creation of the Israeli nation.
In 1952, Chaim Weizmann passed away, and the presidency was vacant. Einstein, still working in physics at Princeton University, was offered the chance to fill the role, although Ben-Gurion doubted he would accept. Here's what Einstein wrote him in response. "I am deeply moved by the offer from our State of Israel, and at once saddened and ashamed that I cannot accept it. All my life I have dealt with objective matters, hence I lack both the natural aptitude and the experience to deal properly with people and to exercise official functions. For these reasons alone, I should be unsuited to fulfill the duties of that high office, even if advancing age was not making increasing inroads on my strength. I am the more distressed over these circumstances because my relationship with the Jewish people has become my strongest human bond, ever since I became fully aware of our precarious situation among the nations of the world." Albert Einstein died in 1955, several days before he planned to participate in an Israeli Independence Day celebration. In it, he praised Israel and criticized world powers, stating, "The pressure of Arab hostility and the counter-pressure of Israel's defense have created a constant tension. It is anomalous that world opinion should not actively seek to bring an end to Arab hostility, which is the root cause of the tension." Einstein continues, The establishment of the State of Israel was internationally approved and recognized largely for the purpose of rescuing the remnant of the Jewish people from unspeakable horrors of persecution and oppression. Another purpose was to provide conditions in which the spiritual and cultural life of a Hebrew society could find free expression. Thus, the establishment of Israel is an event which actively engages the conscience of this generation. In his will, he wrote that he wished that all his papers and manuscripts should be donated to Hebrew University. And so, if you are ever in Jerusalem and on the Hebrew University campus, you can visit the Albert Einstein Archives, which includes both his scientific and personal writings, the famous E=mc² formula, his personal books, photos, and more. This has been a moment in Jewish history. For questions or comments and past shows, you can check out benbresky.substack.com. Thank you to all the listeners, and shalom.